Hello and welcome back. Alright, so in this video we're going to take a look at creating our XCode project for our Tic-Tac-Toe game and restructuring the project file to match the directory structure that we wanted, and then also getting our project added into Git so that we can jump over into Visual Studio to round out everything we need to finish there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this Create New Project link. We're going to create a C++ command line tool. Click Choose, and we're going to create a project called Tic-Tac-Toe. Beautiful. Alright, so we got our main little editor, we got our main CPP file. Let's go ahead and build. Oops. Build results, bring that over here. And that's the wrong window. I wanted the debugger window. Run it. Okay, we can see hello world got output. Great. So we know everything is working. Go ahead and clear that and close this. Okay, so we got our basic project. It's not too shocking that a new project got built. So let's go ahead and muck with our project system. So what we want to do, or sorry, our file system. So we're going to right click on the project and click Reveal in Finder. That's going to bring up that Tic-Tac-Toe folder that we just created for our project. So in here I want to point out a few things. One, we can see that we have a build folder. And the way that the project's set up, the build folder gets output to where the Xcode project file is. And then we can also see that we have this main CPP file and this tic-tac-toe.1. This tic-tac-toe.1 is a documentation file that gets generated, and so we need to move those into the correct structure. So if you remember back from our project structure video, we want a source folder, we want a documentation folder, and then we want a projects folder. So we know that we want to put our code documentation into the documentation folder. We want to put the source code into the source folder. And then we're going to put these into the projects folder. And then I'll just do a quick cleanup here. Okay, let's go into the projects, because remember we wanted an Xcode and a Visual Studio folder as well. So we'll create an Xcode folder and move those guys right in there. I can see Xcode in the background didn't actually freak out too much. But we're going to go ahead and close this project behind us, and we'll just click Close, and then close the project, and then click Close again. Okay, so we're doing that because Xcode really needs to have the project settings reloaded from its current location. Alright, so now if we look at this, you'll notice that the main CPP file is red. What that means is that it can't actually find the file. So there's a couple ways that we can fix this. But the way that I'm going to go about doing it is I'm going to right click on this source, and I'm going to change, oops, let's bring that into the window. I'm going to change the path of where it thinks source is. Because if we take a look at this info pane, we can see that the path type for this source group is relative to enclosing group, and we can see that its path is none. So what that means is it is the same location as the project file. And this full path we can see is exactly that. We moved that project file into the Xcode folder. So yeah. So what we want to do is we want to make this source actually point to the source folder that we created. So what we do is click Choose, and then we jump up 2 levels to our base Tic-Tac-Toe folder and click Source. Click Choose, and you can notice that the path got set here, or changed to .. / source. And so what that is telling it is relative to my project file, which is this enclosing group, go up 2 directories and look in the source folder. And in the background you can see that it actually changed as soon as I did that, and it has turned back to black. If I click on this, now we can actually see the content. Okay, so we want to do the same thing for our documentation. So we're going to right click, Get Info, choose, go up 2 directories, click Documentation, and choose. And then we can click the Close button, and you can see that the documentation is linked properly. So the next thing we want to do is we want to build. Let's see if we still build. Great, we got a build succeeded. Let's bring up that debugger console, hit run. Great. So now we are back into a working state. And if we can go back out to our Finder, let's reveal this in Finder. Well, we can open in Finder too. That opens the project file. So let's go ahead and go up a few levels. Here's our Tic-Tac-Toe folder. We can see that, hey, great, when we rebuilt the project, we didn't get a new build folder out here. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. And the only items we have in our root folder are our folders to our other places. Our source folder, great, nothing new got added there. Documentation, great, nothing extra. Projects looks clean. Xcode looks great. Okay, so we got that working. So now what we want to do is we need to add this into our Git repository. Okay, that seems simple enough. I'm going to go ahead and start up our terminal application, which is OS X's console app. And we'll bring that into view. And I actually need to go ahead and cd into this path, so I'm going to cheat. We'll do this and come over to the console. We'll say cd, and this will get us close. Okay, so now I'm into the root. I'm going to go ahead and close that Finder window in the background. Oops. Okay, so here I'm looking at the console window, and I'm in my current directory. And this is my root directory for my project, and so this is where I want to initialize my Git repository. So in order to do that, I just type git init. And you can see the output says initialized empty Git repository. Great. That's exactly what I want. Alright, so the next thing I want to do is, remember that I said that I wanted to use GitHub to store my files. Well, I can do that pretty simply. And go over to Safari. Let's head on over to github.com. And this is the basic website that you see when you're already logged in. So what I want to do is click New Repository. My project name is going to be Tic-Tac-Toe. And this is going to be the Tic-Tac-Toe game for 3D Buzz. And then we'll go ahead and point back to 3D Buzz for our URL. And we're going to make this public for everybody. Click Create. And now the nice thing about Git is it tells you, hey, how do you actually go about setting up your repository? Well, it says to make dir, cd, git init. I've already done all those things. And then it recommends you add a Readme file and some other things that we'll go ahead and do in 1 second. So this global setup right here, I want to specify or talk about this. What this is going to do is that if you run these commands, git config -- global user.name, and then obviously use your name, and same thing for the email, use your contact email. What these are that author information that gets associated with your commits. That way, they're properly identified and they have some sort of contact info, or properly attributed. If you're doing an open source project, you want to at least maybe get some recognition, or for people to know that, hey, this person's been doing this, maybe we should talk to them if we're going to make any changes around here. So this is very important to set up. You can also set these up per repo if you don't want to do globally, but I'm not going to really talk about how to go about doing that. All right, so if we look and see here, what do we really need to do down here? We need to add our files, and then we need to make our first commit, and then we need to do this weird git remote add origin URL command. Now this is obviously going to be specific to your Git repository. If you're creating one on GitHub, this is the location in which you can access your Git things. You also need to set up some SSH keys, which I've already done on my computer, and there's a nice help on GitHub on walking you through that if you're creating an account for the first time. So let's walk through what this git remote add is doing, and then we'll go ahead and go through the other steps that we need to do. Git remote add origin URL. So what it's really doing is specifying a location that you can reference, and that's that origin and then the URL. So remember when I said we're going to do git pull and git push and you need to specify a URL? Well, if you can make an easy name or an easy alias, is probably a better term, an alias to the actual URL here instead of having to type this in all the time, because that's just not fun. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this because I don't want to type that and I won't remember the URL. Okay, so we know we need to jump over here, and if we do a listing again, we have all these files. And so Git has this nice little status command, and so it'll tell you what it thinks, or what's currently staged, and that's in this piece up here. And then this untracked file section tells you, hey, I don't know what you want me to do with these. You can see that I have this .ds_store file, and I don't want that in my check-ins ever. So there's a nice little command or a little file we can use in Git, and it's called gitignore. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new gitignore file, add that ds_store entry, and then I'll show you what happens in the untracked files. So I'm using Vim. You can use whatever editor you want to. You can use Notepad, TextEdit. It doesn't matter. Okay, so go ahead and write that out. So now notice when I do git status, you can see the ds_store file went away, right? It looks like it got replaced by gitignore. It didn't really get replaced, but gitignore is a new file that is showed up that Git doesn't know what you want to do with. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and add these files. So let's add gitignore, git add.gitignore. And we want to add everything under the documentation folder, everything under the source folder. Okay, so now when we do git status, you can see that, hey, Git says, hey, we have a new file, and gitignore the Tic-Tac-Toe file and our main CPP file. Okay, so now we want to go into our projects directory, because remember we had that, our projects and XCode directory. Because remember, if we look, we had that build folder. We don't want that. And so all we want to do is add the XCode project. So we'll just do git add Tic-Tac-Toe. In our XCode proj, it's actually a folder. So we're just going to go ahead and add everything underneath it. It has some user files, but there's prefaced with your username, so it's not that big of a deal. So yeah. So let's go ahead and go up 2 levels again, back to our root. Do a list. Yes, we're actually at the right spot. Git status. Well, you can see that, hey, there's these 3 extra files that got added for our Xcode project. Okay, perfect. So now what I want to do is do git commit. And I can do -m. And what that allows you to do is just type in a simple message. If you don't do the -m, then you'll get a text editor popped up, or your default editor. In my case, it'll be Vim again, but it'll totally depend on what system you're on. Okay, so git commit -m, and I'm just going to do initial commit. Okay, and then you can see that outputs all this work that it did. You can see 6 files changed, number of assertions. That's just how Git does things. And then it gives you kind of this hash right here. This is the short reference to your, so like when I drew 1 in the diagram, that's really what this number is referencing. It's your commit ID, essentially. Okay, so we do git status now. You can see that, hey, there's nothing that is checked out, or sorry, not checked out. Nothing that's looking to be added. There's nothing that's currently staged. And then there's that build folder that we ignored. We could add that build to the git ignore if you wanted to. Totally up to you. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to do that remote command. If we jump back over to the help, so I've basically gone through all the way up to this stage. Now I need to do the git remote and then push. Okay, so copy paste that in, git remote, add origin. I'm fine with calling that origin and the URL. Looks like nothing happens, but that did get there. So then we're going to do git push origin master. So what this is telling is push to this URL using the master branch. So if we jump over here and we click on source, we're not going to see anything because we don't have any code in there yet. But by default, the tree that you have right here is the master tree. That's kind of the root of your repository and how it gets referred to. So what we want to do is push all of our changes into that tree. All right. So if we do git push, we wait. Oh. Sometimes your SSH key gets asked. I'm going to go ahead and remember that and not show it to you. So Git requires these SSH keys, and so I have a public key and a private key on my box, and so what that prompt was I have a passphrase on my private keys, or my public and private keys. So every so often you have to enter in the password. So yeah, that's what that was. Okay, so we now will push this up. So let's go ahead and jump over to GitHub, and I'll show you what happened. If we click on source again this time, you can see that, hey, these are all my items that I actually had. And then Git gives you this nice little friendly warning that says, hey, you should add a Readme file. It's a good thing to do typically for open source projects, just so people, actually let me show you what it does. So hello, this is our Tic-Tac-Toe game. Smiley face. Okay, so I'm going to add this, git commit, added a simple readme file. Okay, and then we'll git push. Actually, I can just shorthand it now that I've set up the origin and the master and it knows where it's going. Okay, so you can see that it all got pushed up there correctly. Okay, so what the README does is GitHub actually looks for this README file, and it'll output the contents of the file down below. So you can see that, hey, hello, this is our Tic-Tac-Toe game. So that's obviously the file that we just added and the contents of it. So this is a great place to put like contact information, how to set up your project, what kind of dependencies your project has, any information that you would like to communicate to whoever's coming to visit your project. That's great to put in your README file, and then GitHub will show that for you. Okay, so I think with that video, we've covered everything that I wanted to do. In our next video, we'll take a look at how we import all of this from from GitHub into Windows and get a new project created in Visual Studio. So with that, thanks.